What's up, everybody? Today I have another great MCAT/DAT question inspired by a paper actually that I just read. And I'll link the paper below in the description, but I want to go ahead and get into this problem, which says the surfaces of all organs in the human body are covered by epithelial cells. Recently, it has been found that when these cells stretch, so what I want you to see is like, okay, let's say these are the epithelial cells. What I want you to see is when they stretch. So let's say there's something that causes them to stretch, aka they get longer. Which often happens when there's a scarcity of cells in the region. A receptor piezo1 on the surface of the cell is activated. The activation of piezo1 often leads to a downstream cascade that ultimately causes the epithelial cell to divide. Based on this information, what kind of receptor is piezo1? Okay, so again, a very MCAT-like question where you're given an information which again is derived straight from a paper and asked to choose from five answer choices about a relatively intricate concept. The big concept here is that of receptors. Do you know your receptors? Knowing your receptors is imperative on any standardized test, primarily because receptors are inherently part of every physiological process. And so I'm going to go through down each one of these. And again, the point of this is not so you know what the right answer is, but you also get to learn what each of these receptors are and how they're relevant. So again, we want to make sure we're understanding that. With that being said, photoreceptors. The word photo means light, right? So the word photo means light, and therefore these are receptors that respond to light, right? And obviously, the biggest place where these receptors are prevalent are, as you can tell from the upper right hand corner, is that the eye is an organ that relies entirely on photoreceptors. Because think about it, right? The reason why you can see so well is because light interacts with your eye, and that's why you see well at night. I mean, that's why you see well in the day, and at nighttime you can't see as well, right? And in your eye, there are two different types of photoreceptors that have this protein called rhodopsin. Okay, so rhodopsin, as I've written down, is the protein and is present in both of these photoreceptors. And there are two types of photoreceptors, which are known as rods and cones, right? So in this case, cones are responsible for a red, blue, and I believe maybe green. But the point is, I'd say cones are responsible for color vision, right? On the other hand, um, rods are responsible for black and white vision. Okay, and those are photoreceptors, so they respond to light. In our problem, however, notice that the photoreceptors had nothing to do with the overall epithelial cell stretching. So A is probably not the right answer. But again, let's keep going down the list and see what is the right answer. So next up, we have osmoreceptors. Osmoreceptors detect a change in blood concentration. So what do I mean by that? Your blood after you eat a bunch of potato chips is going to be super concentrated because you just put a ton of salt in your blood. On the other hand, if you drink 7 glasses of water in a row, your blood concentration is going to be really dilute. Okay, so blood concentration usually refers to the number of ions in the blood, and the number of ions in the blood is also responsible for thirst. Okay, and again, this is going to go straight back to the potato chip example because when you eat a lot of potato chips, what happens? You get thirsty, right? So osmoreceptors are responsible for detecting changes in the concentration of ions in your blood, right? And that's, if you look at this lower left-hand corner, it's a really great place because as your blood osmolarity increases, right? Let's say it increases, these osmoreceptors will notice that, and they actually detect the changes in the salt concentrations, and ADH is released, which is the hormone, and that kind of causes a balancing. And similarly, you also have a negative regulation, and again, thirst is controlled by osmolarity. But osmoreceptors as a whole respond to salt slash ions, and again, in this case, we're responding to stretch, so that's probably not the right answer. Let's keep going down. Next up, we have mechanoreceptors. Mechanoreceptors, again, mechano. You can think about mechano as being any sort of mechanical stimulus, right? Detects mechanical stimulus. Um, and the best example of this is touch, okay? Touch is the best example of mechanoreceptors. In your skin, there are tons and tons of mechanoreceptors. So when you touch something, it causes an indentation in your skin, which is then picked up by these receptors that tells you you're touching something. So the best example of mechanoreception is touch, right? And in touch, like let's say this is your hand, right? It is actually your hand. You'll notice that in this case, if I touch it, you're causing a push downward, and that causes the skin to actually be disconfigured in a unique way that causes you to detect that stimulus. So again, mechanoreceptors detect mechanical stimuli, whether that's a stretch, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, pull, or a push, right? Those are all things picked up by mechanoreceptors because they actually notice forces, right? Next up, Nociceptors. So Nociceptors, again, was an answer choice, but I want to make sure you understand this. This is actually one of the harder ones to remember, but Nociceptors alert you to pain-related stimuli. All right. So if you think about touching a really hot stove, that's activating nociceptors. That's going to tell you to pull away right away. So high temperatures. It's also um, it's very receptive to toxic chemicals. So you can think about like when you eat something horrible, which I hope you'd never do, but if you did, I'm sure your body would tell you it's bad. On the other hand, also poison. And in this example, in the lower left-hand corner, you have a needle poking through your skin. That actually also activates nociceptors. So what are the receptors actually binding to in nociceptors? Well, if they're nociceptors, the things that they're actually binding to are these kinds of things: bradykinins, prostaglandins, nerve growth factors. The consortium of these factors are what pain receptors ultimately bind to, and they activate your sensation of pain. So you could say, in a way, nociceptors are a type of chemoreceptor because they bind to chemicals. But in this case, there's specific types of chemicals that activate the stimulus of pain. Last but not least, I now want to talk about chemoreceptors. So chemoreceptors are a much more broad set of receptors. I already said that nociceptors are a subset of chemoreceptors, but chemoreceptors as a whole detect chemicals. Okay, and the reason why it's so cool is because chemoreceptors are responsible for the taste sense. The sense of taste is all chemoreceptors because everything you eat is a chemical, right? And more importantly, because taste is just one of the senses, think also about smell. Smell is also governed by chemoreceptors. So smell and taste are both governed by different chemicals that come in that bind to receptors and tell us what exactly we're smelling or tasting. But the other thing people don't know is, believe it or not, your breathing rate is also controlled by chemoreceptors. Well, why is that? Because when you breathe, you're indirectly taking in and exhaling carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide dissolves in your blood as bicarbonate, and bicarbonate is a chemical, right? Chemical that can bind to your receptors. And bicarbonate can either decrease, it usually does decrease the blood pH, and it binds to chemoreceptors and ultimately causes regulation of your breathing rate. So I just wanted to show you these cool applications. What do chemoreceptors bind to? Well, they bind to chemicals, right? And so do nociceptors, but nociceptors then activate the pain pathway, whereas chemoreceptors might be more broad and they activate something like taste or smell. Okay, so now we know that photoreceptors respond to light. We know osmoreceptors respond to the concentration of ions. We know mechanoreceptors respond to pressure, stretch, or touch. We know nociceptors they don't respond to pain, they respond to chemicals that ultimately give you pain, right? On the other hand, chemoreceptors are much more broad that ultimately give you chemicals, right? And so based on all of these answers, given that these epithelial cells that we talked about are responding to this aspect of stretch, right? They're responding to a stretch. The fact that when they stretch, it activates the aspect of division means that they are a type of mechanoreceptors. So C is the right answer. And again, I want to encourage you to not only look for the right answer, but also know a lot about them and also know why the other 4 answers are wrong. So hopefully I did a good job explaining it. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. Really appreciate it. You want to check out any of my other videos, there's going to be one right here, another link to one of my videos right here, and another video right here. Why not? I'll put one video right over here. And last but not least, if you want to subscribe to this channel, really appreciate it because I'm still an early YouTuber trying to get it down, but a subscription button should be right over here. So please subscribe. Cool. Thanks. See you guys in the next one. Hope you find these videos helpful.